The coronavirus has hit all of us hard, some of us more than others. For today, tens of thousands of people across the nation are grieving the loss of a loved one. Could be a spouse or a friend, could be a child or a brother, could be a parent or a neighbor or a coworker. Regardless, the grief has hit us in the midst of the social isolation, making our grief even harder. Because where do you go? Where do you turn to? There's no group of people that you can run to, no person that can hug you, no gathering of the family or church. There's no wake or funeral. And perhaps you weren't even able to be there when your loved one died. What do you do? How do you make it through? Pivot Family Foundation has produced this series of videos of experts in the field of grief and bereavement to give tips and guidance and wisdom to help you navigate this season and to remind you of something very simple but very powerful. You are not alone. Though you may feel like you are, you're not. There are people who are with you and who are for you. So thanks for watching, and find encouragement in the days ahead.
So I want to talk about the response part of things. Here we are with this grief that's been complicated by the isolation and no funerals, no church, no kind of connection with people physically, at least. Let's talk about a healthy response. How can people respond to our unique situation, global pandemic situation? How can they respond in a healthy way, dealing with their grief and moving forward in a healthy way?
Okay. Well, just yesterday, a few days ago, I think it was, I spoke with a man who in the midst of this pandemic was grieving the death of his son. And, of course, he is living with the fact that he couldn't bury his child. They'd have to delay the burial, and they had to make a decision on whether to cremate, which wasn't how they traditionally would have dealt with his body. They had to make a decision under the circumstances that they chose. They chose to cremate, and they had to not have the funeral that they would have wanted to have, and that was fuel for a lot of despair, helplessness. And one of the things that just impressed me so much was that in the face of that, this man was able to say, well, the funeral's not canceled, it is delayed. And what we can do now is plan it. Right. And they planned the funeral in detail. They have a vision of what they're going to do. They've done it collaboratively with other members of the family. And so they were able to move forward, even though the actual event is going to be delayed and they don't know when it'll actually happen. But it didn't stop them. It didn't freeze them in place, so to speak. They began to see what they could do. And that was very inspiring to me. It was a sign of tremendous resilience. Mm-hmm. And I see that a lot, in the folks that I'm working with, is a sense of really working within the parameters that they're given. Mm-hmm. And that is, to me, a sign of health, a sign of hope that resonates. It gives me it's like a breath of fresh air for me when I encounter people, and many people are doing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what you're seeing, then there's a good, healthy response overall to this and moving forward and dealing with the grief.
Right. What can I do? And another thing that I see often in folks is how they're maintaining a sense of humor. Not about the person that died, but maybe if they're talking about the person and the life of the person, and they find themselves laughing about the person, discovering joy in memories, and I think that humor elevates a situation quite profoundly for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So it lightens the heaviness of the circumstances beautifully. So when I see humor coming forth, in a conversation that's very heavy and dark. And it brings me a sense of hope that this person will be able to find a way here with incorporating creativity and humor and some levity. So that's another sign for me, an indicator of healing and health.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think a lot of people don't see humor as a part of the whole process, but I think, like you're saying, it is a healthy response. It's not a negative thing to be jovial about certain situations or about the person themselves, the life they live, the conversations you've had in the past. So I think you can focus on that during your grief and find some light in the midst of the darkness.
Absolutely. As someone who is a helping person, we kind of, speaking for myself, I sometimes in conversation am so amazed at the ability to maneuver in that regard. I wouldn't tell a joke to someone in grief, but when they tell me a joke or they say something funny that we laugh together, it's just an awareness that we have a capacity to maneuver in a healthy fashion.
Right.
It's a gift to everybody.
Yes, it is. As far as responding in a healthy fashion too, I want to focus in on maybe some practical aspects of that. How can a person in grief, in isolation, what are some practical things they can do to connect, to grieve in a healthy way? Give some strategies or tips or ideas.
Okay. Okay, so you can't go to the funeral. One suggestion might be to think about what most draws you into a funeral. What aspects of a funeral give you strength or inspire you? Mm-hmm. It might be the music. It might be particular prayer that you're drawn to. It might be the photographs that people often have at a wake or after the funeral that shows us the story of the life of a person that kind of connects you to memory. So whatever that might be, or a combination of that might be, are things that one who is unable to have that event can actually consciously choose to explore. It might be finding a song that you would love to have heard at the funeral or you intended to play or intend to play in the future, but finding it on Spotify or whatever you have, or you have if you have a CD or something, and playing it, and not just playing it, but also playing it and really taking it to heart when you play it. It might be getting out photo albums, pictures that you want to remember. You can get out your photos and you can look at them, and maybe if you are sheltering in place with someone who you love, then it might be a collaborative experience to do with your loved one. I'm going to refer to some notes, so I'll be turning away a bit. So whether it's prayers that you're finding that you can recite or share with someone, or just for yourself, listening to music, or a friend of mine just called me yesterday, and she was saying that she's not long ago, both she and I had our mothers died fairly recently, within the past 8 months, and they knew each other. Our two mothers were friends, so we both kind of. I wouldn't say I'm actively grieving my mom's death any longer, but we're very connected to our relationship to our moms in different ways right now, as we're experiencing our particular circumstances now in isolation, etc. So we and I don't know whether other people are feeling this, but I'm finding that during this time I feel a strong connection to my mother. My mother died at the age of 97. She had it for many years in my life, and all of my almost 70 years that I've been around, I had her in my life, and I feel her presence, but more than I feel her presence, I miss her. So, and maybe at times of duress in our lives, we want our moms. I don't know. I'm noticing that for myself. I wish I had my mom here. I'm relieved that she died, and not having to go through this pandemic and all the worry that she would have.
Oh yeah.
And she was certainly old enough to really finish a good life. But I would like her around selfishly, just to talk with sometimes, and I miss her for that. But anyway, my friend contacted me, and she was saying maybe we can pull together friends in our community, even though we can't be together. We can find a time once a week where we can set aside um, a few minutes at a designated time to light a candle and just remember that we're still here together as a community. Remember the people we're missing, and just do that and really have a sense of a larger community with us symbolically, and also actually they are with us if we're all we're all committing to be together in our own space and do that. And she wasn't necessarily interested in doing it on Zoom. She just, as I always thought, what might be a way of doing that. But she said no. She just feels like she just wants to know what's happening, kind of like setting a tone beyond what we can look at, but kind of in a larger sense. That was really touching to me. Yeah. Of course, there are online support groups. A lot of people aren't familiar with Zoom and getting more and more familiar with Zoom, but Zoom is a tremendous opportunity for us in confinement. So there's online supports. There's organizations like Open to Hope, which if you don't know about it, is a great resource. There's educational resources. There are all sorts of podcasts and videos with people in the field who are doing like what we're doing, Bruce, and talking and offering information and hopefully offering inspiration.
And it's Open to Hope.
Open to Hope. Yeah.
Is there a web, openhope.com, I suppose?
I believe .com. Yeah. It's a great resource. If you just Google Open to Hope, you'll get them.
Okay.
Also, it's grief.com, if you don't know about that. It's another one. They have also similar kinds of resources. A lot of therapists and grief counselors are working remotely exclusively now, and a lot of counselors who weren't doing remote work are doing it, of course, now, and others were doing it already. But it's a great resource. I remember just yesterday working with a young woman who had never been in therapy before, and we had our initial session like this. It wasn't the typical way of working,
right.
And we went forward with it, and she. She was a little bit younger, and she's a lot younger than me. So maybe she's a little more familiar with remote communication. But it was really quite interesting to kind of encounter a therapeutic relationship initially like this. I have a lot of clients who I've worked with already, and we switched to this format, which also is sometimes for different people harder than others. But there are resources available. Hospices are holding support groups remotely. All sorts of resources are out there. Another thing that people are doing, and I've done in the past, is thinking about your loved one and how different ways that you might have connected to him or her. And one way is, of course, through food. And often we know what was so-and-so's favorite food, and we can prepare it perhaps if we have the ingredients at home, and really enjoy a delicious meal that we would have loved to have shared with him or her, but now we can really just remember them and kind of ingest our love for this person. Sure. And really appreciate him or her and really feel that, it's like comfort food, it's like a way of being with him or her through what you enjoy doing together.
Right.
Lots of possibilities, kind of endless, I think.
I think you're right. You have to think outside the norm of the way you typically have responded in the past with counseling or groups or funerals or family gatherings. I was thinking as you were talking about how people could do almost a family gathering through Zoom, and they could talk about their loved one distantly and have that conversation as individuals and remember and grieve and laugh and talk. I think that's a viable alternative as well.
Yeah, and we miss the hugs.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that aspect. We can cry together on Zoom. It's a different kind of way, but we can.
Yes.
So there's a sense of presence that we feel that I think people are surprised how sometimes there's a sense of they were there together, but you really weren't there physically together. Often when I've been Zooming lately, I kind of feel that I had a house. If I do a group, I feel that they're here with me, and I sometimes when I look back on the encounter in a group that I'm facilitating this way, through remotely, I feel like my house was full with all these people and we were connected together. It does have that sense. It brings us that sense of connectedness.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's it's hard to explain, but I think you have to actually be there to feel that, you know.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching this episode. I'm glad you found some encouragement and guidance and wisdom to get you through this season of life. This coronavirus will one day end, so will the quarantine, and you'll be able to reconnect with family and friends and to find some healing from that personal touch of being with them. You can't change the past. It's permanent and it's gone. But you can choose a new future. You can choose to move forward in your life, which is what you've actually done by watching this video. You've taken a step to find healing even in the midst of social isolation. So congratulations to you. I hope you will share this video with others and help them find the encouragement and healing that they need to. Thanks so much.